most people have fond memories of books that were read to them when they were little, that helped shape them to become who they are today. Now, some of those books for me were The Rainbow Fish. The glittery scales on it always caught my attention. Or Green Eggs and Ham. I loved the funky characters that were in there and the way it rhymed. And I would always have races with my little brother about who could read the book the fastest. But one of them that stood out to me the most was Stand Back, Said the Elephant, I'm Going to Sneeze. I had really great memories of sitting on my grandma's lap and her reading me this book. She would use different characters' voices, like really high voices or really low voices, to get the point across. And I've just always had really happy memories with that. And that's what I wanted to inspire for my senior project. My name is Danielle Batchelor, and my project is development through reading. So a little bit of art history is, so I started art when I was in middle school. I saw a class for art. It was beginning art, and I decided to take it. I was a little nervous, but I actually learned a lot from that class. I still wasn't the greatest artist, but when I got to high school, I saw that there was more art classes, so I decided to take a beginning class. Mr. Coles was my teacher, and he ended up really pushing me to be the best artist I could be. I was able to start off with cartoon characters to work on proportions, and I started with Pluto, and after I drew him, I realized that I loved drawing cartoon characters. I've also drawn Dory and a lot of other characters. Some art techniques that I learned from my art teachers were colored pencils, so using different colors to get heat and cool colors, and charcoal, finding ways to smudge the colors together to create a picture. I've always loved art since I was little, and I hope to continue in art. But this is what inspired my project. So my project was to write and illustrate a children's book. I thought it would be an easy project, but as I started working on it, I realized there was going to be a lot more work into it than I planned. It took about 12 or more hours to complete, and that was just one book. And it takes so much planning. So I started with concept art. I wanted to draw pictures of things that I was good at, and I realized that drawing cartoon animals was my strong suit, and so that's what I focused on. I decided that I was going to do forest animals, so some of my animals was Stella the squirrel, Mitch the moose, Frankie the fox, and Bart the bear. With these characters, each of them have a different personality. For example, Stella the squirrel was kind of crazy and couldn't keep her attention in one place, or Mitch the moose, he's very long and lanky and kind of clumsy, or Frankie the fox, who was going to be cranky and mad all the time. I had a lot of fun drawing these characters for the book. So after I drew the characters, I decided I was going to write the book about Mitch the moose, since I had the most fun drawing him. So with the book, it starts out with him going and playing with his friends. And as he's playing with his friends, he realizes that his antlers are too big to hide, or his legs are too long and lanky that he trips. And he gives up, and he says, I'm not going to play anymore because I don't fit in. And his friend says, I know someone who can help, and he takes him to the Wise Owl. But on their way to the Wise Owl's house, he goes through trials of helping his friend Frankie the fox, getting up Boulder Hill, or getting him out of the raging river. And at the end, he meets the Wise Owl, and the Wise Owl tells him, you've had it all along, you've helped your friend get through many trials. And it turns out that Mitch the Moose did have great strengths in his abilities, and so he learns self-worth. So starting out, after I wrote the storyline, I drew the first two pictures of the book. And after I did that, I realized I don't know what to draw next. And so I kind of was at a stopping point, and I was like, what do I do? Do I write the story or do I draw the pictures? So I decided to write the story first. Writing the book was a lot easier because then I was able to draw the pictures off of the book. So, I went onto an a website called Shutterfly, where we could enter in words and put a picture in place for that. So I wrote out the whole book, and I was able to come up with the pictures to go with it. So I wrote the whole book, and I drew the pictures, and then I had the last few pages to do. I saved the hardest ones for last. I had a hard time drawing this Boulder Hill one because I had a hard time drawing the moose from a side view. But all in all, it was really good, and I fixed any last grammar mistakes that was on the book, and I scanned them in. So after I scanned the books in, or the pictures in, I realized that a lot of the color was gone out of the pictures, and I was really nervous for that, but it actually ended up turning out okay because the book came and the color was actually pretty vibrant in the book, and it turned out really well. So for my paper, I decided to do it on children's development through reading. My first point was about brain development, and children have so much brain development in the first 5 years of life that it's super important to be reading to them so that they can expand their brains. A quote from Crystal Ponte says, "The first 6 years of life are the most important for healthy brain development." She talks about how when you make connections with in your brain because of pictures and words, it makes it so much better, and you are able to develop later in life a lot faster. The second point is become aware of their surroundings. There was research done on kids that these kids were read a book with pictures, and the kids were able to tell the story back to the adults much better rather than just watching animation to tell it back. Because when kids are read to and see pictures, they are able to make the connection by themselves rather than just having animation all dumped on them, because they don't get much out of that. Reading to children at a young age also creates good behaviors. It creates a nice personal relationship that enforces respect between children and parents and guardians, and it can help their behaviors in school. And for last, they expand their vocabulary. When kids are exposed to higher vocabulary, they do better in school, and they are able to explain things that happen to them in a higher vocabulary. So what I learned and how it challenged me. Not everything goes to plan. I realized that my book, I wanted to do 5 books, and I realized how much work one book was going to be, so I narrowed it down to 1. It took a long time drawing all the cartoon characters for the book, and procrastination is never a good idea. It's definitely better to get things done right away. Any questions?
Did you enjoy doing this project?
Yeah, I did. I think I would do it in the future because I had a lot of fun doing it. It just takes a lot of time.
So you think you'd like to make this a career?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I think that it would be super interesting, and I think it'd be fun to publish my book. And here's my works cited.